Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Immersion Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company. Dear listeners, thank you for joining Immersion Technologies in Education podcast. And I am happy to introduce you to Drew today, and I'm going to give him a word so he can tell which country he's from, what he's doing, and anything else about himself. Here you go.
Thanks for having me, and my name is Drew Perkins. I'm the Director of Professional Development at TeachThought, and we are based in the United States but have facilitators in several places around the country. What we do is a couple things. TeachThought.com is our main blog, which is content that helps teachers and educators around the world think differently about teaching and learning and hopefully improve teaching and learning. And then professional development, which is our PD site, WeGrowTeachers.com. And we design and deliver professional development around the world, and also have our own podcast, the TeachThought podcast, that folks might be interested in tuning into, because I host a lot of those. We have other folks that host some of them, but that is one of the things that I enjoy most about my job and my work here at TeachThought, is getting to talk with interesting folks, kind of like what you get to do, I would imagine, from time to time. So that's in a nutshell, kind of what we do.
That's absolutely brilliant and interesting. So we are on the right path to ask you, what do you think about using technology in the classroom? And are you positive or negative about that? And maybe you can share some thoughts, as you're probably talking to other educators, what they think of that.
Yeah, well, I would say that it is both positive and negative in regards to technology use in education. Of course, the danger and one of the sort of pitfalls of using technology in education is that people and teachers sometimes feel like it's sort of fun and a neat tool and trick, and so they come across something that they think is really neat and engaging and interesting, which is all good. Certainly we want those qualities and characteristics in technology tools, or any tool for that matter, but they often use that excitement to then think, how can I design a lesson that I can use this tool, because man, wouldn't that be fun? That can sometimes work, but very rarely doesn't work. What we really try to help teachers understand, and it is important dynamic, is what is the purpose that we are trying to achieve? You know, sort of what's the why? What are we trying to accomplish? And when you start with that and work outwards, then you start to identify technology tools and non-technology tools that are appropriate for what you're trying to accomplish. So you're not sort of just engaging in technology for technology's sake. There's sort of that misnomer, of course, that it engages students and gets them interested, and I think that is true, but it's a bit of fool's gold. It doesn't have a sustaining dynamic to it very often. You know, it's no secret that it is fun to start a new video game, for example, but at some point that video game becomes not quite as interesting. It loses its luster, and you'll move on to something else. And thinking about that as it plays out in schools and classrooms, you might have that early interest and engagement, the excitement around an interesting tech tool, but what happens when that sort of excitement and vibrance starts to fade, especially if it fades very quickly? Now you're left with not only trying to fight the battle of compliance around the content and the learning, but also the compliance effort or battle with the actual technology, because they're sort of over it, if you will.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. So, what would be your personal attitudes? Like, it's gonna be also like kind of in between positive and negative, and not like closer to any of the sides.
As far as how I would like to see technology used in education?
Yeah.
Well, again, just really focusing on what are we trying to accomplish, and teachers need to be well aware of emerging technologies and sort of be cognizant of new tools, but there's no way for teachers to be aware of all of the tools, because it's just tremendously overwhelming. So being, technology literate, and also allowing students some voice in that technology, those technology choices and ideas, so that when you do have a piece of content or something that you're trying to teach, that you are able to, number one, think of and recognize what tools might be, technology tools might be a good technique or strategy or I guess avenue, tool to use, but then you're also able to navigate that and help your students navigate that. There is, I'm reminded I have 8 and 10-year-old daughters, and yesterday my 10-year-old daughter was working on a school assignment, and she had read a book called Freak the Almighty, or Freak Almighty, I'm not sure, something like that, but she was supposed to make a sort of a full-page advertisement, and her first instinct was, as a 10-year-old, to get a blank piece of paper and markers and crayons and pencils and stuff, and that would have been just fine. As she came to me and asked me about how she might do that, I thought, what if we used a tool like Canva, which is something that I use in my work quite frequently to make visuals and graphics for social media and websites and things like that we do. And as she engaged in that, it was clear that she found the value in doing that, and also, I think, learned there's a sort of a logic and a process that people engage in when they're engaging with tools like that. And that, to me, is probably more valuable than learning the tool itself, because there are other tools like Canva out there, but how do we use technology to engage students in all kinds of levels of Bloom's taxonomy? So ways that they can identify and learn content and remember, so the basic levels of the bottom levels of Bloom's taxonomy, on up to, how do we create? What can we create? And certainly technology is a great tool to do that. Engage in inquiry. One of the tools that I've come across recently, and I did a podcast with, was or is Recap, and I think that is a promising technology tool where students can really engage in high level of questioning and inquiry, and to me that is really, really important.
As that was like really interesting point and really insightful. As if you as you have touched already the point of immersion technologies, which one would you see like the most perspective and the most useful for the education? Like, no matter in the classroom or maybe at home, which technology would you think, or would be, in your point of view, one of the most useful among the emerging ones?
Well, I mean, there's sort of technologies in general, like certainly video conferencing and recording of video, and certainly the bandwidth and processors have started to catch up with those ability or those needs, on up to, sort of the virtual reality, augmented reality sort of technologies. And those are sort of genres, if you will, as opposed to specific technology tools, like Skype or Google Hangouts, which obviously allow for those video conferencing. And we use video conferencing for coaching, and I think that holds a tremendous amount of value. I'm curious about the future of virtual reality and how that will change classrooms and change teaching and learning. I think it's a great opportunity for students to engage in I guess experiences, and we've done some podcasts with folks around virtual reality, and it is, I think, in its infancy. My daughters can put on at school, they have virtual reality headsets and can engage in trips to the Grand Canyon or places like that. So I think that is certainly an emerging technology that holds lots of promise. But what I always refer back to and go back to is it's not about the technology, it's about the pedagogy. It's how do we use those tools, because in the end, they're all tools, and in almost every case, they don't teach. They don't have the ability to ask the questions and engage in the art of teaching. I mean, there are certainly lots of things like Khan Academy, and artificial intelligence may indeed get to the point very soon where it can be responsive in providing information as needed and sort of personalize, customize some educational opportunities, but nothing that I'm aware of has the ability at this point to do what a highly skilled craftsman-like teacher does, which is demonstrate that art of teaching in so far as when and how and what questions to ask, when to sort of pull back and when to push forward and allow for that productive struggle. So in the end, I think technology is really a great tool, but the best tool is a great teacher.
I totally agree with you on this point. I think teacher will always remain the core element of any education. It's just the different supplementary materials and whatever he's using to kind of enhance the learning process and maybe find the approach to different kids in that sense. And
right.
And as you're talking to different teachers, like you mentioned, and different educators, have you met those who would say, like, I totally deny using technology in the classroom or for any educational purposes? I think the old-fashioned method would be the best. And what do you normally say to those people?
I don't know that I've met anybody who's explicitly said that, but sort of may have that mindset or the reluctance. I would definitely, I understand that for many teachers and really many people, technology can be intimidating, can be daunting. It is interesting, I think, to see. I've often noticed, I would say, sort of the difference between generations, my parents to me, to, let's say millennials, on down to my kids who are 8 and 10. There's a mindset that I don't know quite what that line of demarcation might be, but, my parents who are in their 70s are fairly, it's not that they're reluctant to engage in technology. But they have a different mindset, and it's understandable how teachers might have similar mindsets insofar as they don't have the sort of the intuitiveness of how they might move forward, sort of the logic behind sort of user interfaces. And, I think there are some folks who are almost hesitant because they're afraid they're going to break something. If I click on this, it's going to break something, or it's going to erase all my files. And that has happened to them in the past, so they feel that. And I think the piece to help teachers get past that is to engage in technology and give them some success. One thing, just like a pedagogical shift, if you engage in technology, a technology tool, or whatever sort of uncomfortable, out of your zone of comfort teaching, whether it's technology or non-technology, if it goes poorly, it is very common that those teachers will be very reluctant to go back. So when we do lots of work around project-based learning with teachers, trying to help them understand to start small and experience some success so that they can move forward and grow from there, as opposed to sort of a moonshot and having a sort of a train wreck in their classroom. And the same thing, I think, applies to technology. As a matter of fact, I often use that analogy when talking about project-based learning in kind of the opposite way. So, if you have teachers engage in a tech tool that is, and it just goes so poorly because there's no Wi-Fi, or it's spotty, or the computer's sort of shut down, or the students don't have their logins, or whatever, they have this, what they thought was a really interesting, great lesson planned, and it sort of derails because of logistical or complex technology issues, then they're very, very hesitant to go back. So starting small, and I think that helping it, I think it, just like an instructional coach, I think it's important that teachers have, or it's really helpful that teachers might have a partner in their school on a regular basis, somebody that can help them think and plan in using technology, but then also employ that technology. Because it used to be, 20 years ago, that you would have a computer lab and you would have a person who ran a computer lab. And I think hopefully those things are starting to change, that we don't have a computer lab, that we just have computers, and just like we have books, or had books. And if we have any sort of instructional materials, it makes sense that you have instructional coaches and colleagues that would help you use those to the best of maximize their potential. And I think the same thing is true of technology. So somebody who can help employ and use and get the most out of those tools. And for teachers who are hesitant, reluctant, or not particularly quote unquote good with technology, that can be really important.
That's a fantastic point. Really like it, and it's really encouraging. And as I know that you've mentioned already the blog that we and the podcast, so we will be publishing those links below our discussion in the description to the podcast. Maybe you can name them one more time and tell why those. Is there any other resources, and which resources, and why they would be good for people who are listening to us?
Yeah, thanks. So again, our main blog is TeachThought.com, TeachThought.com, and that has it has all of our blog pieces and resources and links to everything that we have. If you are interested in the professional development, you can go to that site and click on the professional development tab, or just go to our website, which is wegrowteachers.com. But our podcast is available on iTunes and Google Music and Spotify, and we're actually just uploading them to YouTube. Most of them are there. We just need to do a little tweaking and that kind of thing. So yeah, those are the places that folks can find us. We have a summer conference in July that we just opened registration for, and you can find that on our website on wegrowteachers.com. So if folks are interested in that would we would definitely welcome them there. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Drew. Highly appreciate it. And I think it's a really good informational podcast that we have here. And thank you for your time, and have a nice day.
All right. Thank you.
Everything changes.